Welcome to this week's Moonlight of Emuna, Parshas Tzav, Shabbos Hagadol, going into the Yontif of Pesach. This week's learning should be a schus for Shlema, for Shlamas Nechama Bas Shifra, Nusen Feitel ben Yehudis, Yehuda Menachem ben Rechama Pral Malkalei, Shmuel Zalman ben Yochebed Chaba, Menachem Mordechai ben Ophira, and Lil Nishmas, Charnamash Bas Menachem Mendel, Ratza Bas Menachem Mendel, and Henya Bas Echiel Mechel. So, Parshas Tzav very often comes in Shabbos Hagadol. Shabbos Hagadol is the beginning of the preparation for Pesach. We start to say, many people have the minhag, Shabbos Hagadol in the afternoon to read a good portion of the Haggadah. So we're trying to make a little bit of a connection, but I really want to focus on a concept of Emuna that comes up Pesach. We know that Pesach is the Yontif of Emuna. We've talked about that a lot over the past years. Pesach is matzah, is the food of Emuna. Pesach is the Yontif of Emuna. It's the beginning of our peoplehood, of our becoming Hashem's nation. So in the beginning of the parsha, it starts off Vayidaber Hashem al Moshe Lemar. Hashem says to Moshe, Tzav es Aaron ve'ezbanav Lemar. Command Aaron and his sons, saying, Zois Taras ha'olah, and it goes into the halachas of the olah. Rashi says on the word Tzav, to command Aaron, it's unusual. Usually Hashem tells Moshe, tell Aaron Lemar, tell Aaron v'amarta, Emar v'amarta. We have later on with a lot of the halachas of the Kohanim in Parshas Emar. So Rashi says, Ein Tzav el Lashon Zorah. Miyad u'Lederis, that it's a lashon of zerizus immediately and for the future generations. Amr Reb Shimon, and he quotes the Gemara in Kedushin. Amr Reb Shimon, b'yoser tzarach hakasav lezares b'makom sheyesh b'chisaron kis, that the Torah has to give people this lashon of ziruz, of being diligent, of running to do the mitzvah, when there's the potential to lose money. And different explanations are given. The Kehanim, they give up their livelihood in order to do the work in the Beis HaMikdash. They have to bring certain special karbanos themselves when they first start working in the Beis HaMikdash, and the Kohen Gadol has to do every day. Now at the end of the parsha, we get to the inauguration of the children of the Kehanim, the children of Aaron. It says, the last pasuk of the parsha is Vayas Aaron ubanav es kol hadvarim asher tziva Hashem biyad Moshe, that Aaron did all of the things. Aaron and his sons did everything that Hashem said, and Rashi tells us over there, Lahagid Shivchon Shaloi Hitu Yamin Usmal. It's a praise for them that they didn't move right or left. So you see, we have the entire parsha, and in the middle of the parsha is a lot of the halachas of the karbanos, but we see this idea of commanding Aaron and his children, even though there's some kind of a loss, but it's Aaron and his children, and that they all did exactly what Moshe said. And throughout the parsha, we have commands to Aaron Uvanav. It doesn't refer to most of the places the Kohanim. It refers to Aaron and his sons. Now, this is reminiscent to us. We know that Seder night, the Mirz Hashem next week, we'll be doing Seder night. Seder night is all about the children, a lot about the children. So I saw a beautiful idea from Rav Twersky, from Rav Ephraim Twersky of Chicago. So we start off the Haggadah, we know, with Halach Ma'anya, right? That's the beginning of the Haggadah, and we finish the Halach Ma'anya with Hashtahacha. This year we are here. L'shana haba ba'Eretz Yisrael. Next year we'll be in Eretz Yisrael. So he asked the question that seems obvious. We know that we're here. What do you mean Hashtahacha? I'm here. I know I'm here, right? What are we saying with Hashtahacha? And he says that when we get to the four sons in the Haggadah, again, this is the father and sons learning together and teaching each other. But when it comes to the She'eni Yadei Lishol, the one who doesn't know how to ask a question, it says At Psachli, you have to open his mouth. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, V'gad Levincha b'yemahu, you'll tell your son on that day, Lemar, saying, Ba'avor zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeis Mitzrayim. Because of this, Hashem did miracles for me when we left Mitzrayim. And many of the Mefarshim ask, the word lamar seems unnecessary. You could have just said, you tell your son on that day, what's lamar? What's saying? The word lamar, saying, seems unnecessary, seems extra, and we're quoting a pasuk in the Torah. The Torah doesn't use extra words. So there's a very often quoted quote from the Arizal who says that in Mitzrayim, speech was in Galus, and when we left Mitzrayim, speech was redeemed. Speech came out of Galus, and therefore the Yontif is called Pesach, which is a play on the words Peh. Pesach, we only spell Pei Samaches, but if you spelled it Pei Hey Sam, and then the next word Samaches, that means That means a mouth that speaks, and that's part of the reason why we speak so much on Pesach, right? We have the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. We'll come back to that to explain. But he says that there's an idea, there's a concept that's quoted in many Svarim, that there's three levels of Emuna. There's three levels of Emuna that a person can have. The main level of Emuna, which most from Jews have, is a intellectual level of Emuna in one's mind, with one's intellect, which is that a person understands. He has Emuna, he believes, he has faith that Hashem Yisbarach created the world from nothing, right? Yesh me'ayin, nothing, and Hashem keeps the entire world alive every moment, and we believe in divine providence, that Hashem is with us in every small thing and every big thing, everything that happens to us, everything that happens, and that the entire world is filled with Hashem's glory, and Hashem is watching us and sees everything we do. He hears everything we say. He knows our thoughts, right? That's the standard level of Emuna of every Jew. You ask any frum Jew, any religious Jew, and they will tell you they believe in all of those things. Now, while a person, you can wake up a frum Jew in the middle of the night and he'll tell you, of course I believe in Hashem. Does Hashem know everything? Yes. Is everything from Hashem? Yes, right? But sometimes it doesn't reach our heart. It stays in the mind, right? It's because what happens is we see that when we have some kind of a desire to do something we're not supposed to do, something that's an Aveira or something that's against Hashem's will, our Emuna is not strong enough to overcome that, right? It didn't penetrate our heart. Our desire overcomes our Emuna. Yes, intellectually I know that there's Hashem. I know that Hashem is watching me. I know that Hashem doesn't want me to do this, and yet somehow I managed to do it. That means that my Emuna has not penetrated into my heart and to my limbs. It has not fully penetrated. But that's one level of Emuna, which is actually the middle level of Emuna. We're going to talk about a higher level of Emuna and then a lower level of Emuna. So this is a good level of Emuna, but you see that people with this level of Emuna could still do Averas, right? Because even though I know intellectually, but it's not fully there, and therefore I can sort of block it out when I choose to do an Avera, right? Okay. The higher level of Emuna is when a person works on his Emuna and he cultivates it and he works on it till that it becomes a part of him, right? And that is some of the Svarim explain, he doesn't quote which Sefer, that we know one of the first question that a person's asked after 120, based on the Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Lamed Aleph, is Nasata v'Nasata b'Emuna. Did you engage, the basic, the simple translation of this, did you engage in your business faithfully? But the way that many of the Chassidish Svarim explain it is, did you engage, Nasata v'Nasata b'Emuna, did you engage, were you involved with Emuna to make it a part of you, to put it into your heart, to make it a part of you? Somebody who's able to reach this, where Emuna permeates his very being, it's not possible for him to sin, at least not intentionally. Could be he made a mistake, he didn't realize something was an Avera, but he wouldn't be able to choose his own desires over Hashem's, because his Emuna is so complete and it goes through him. How could he eat something that Hashem doesn't want him to eat? How could he do something that Hashem doesn't want him to do? So those are the two basic levels of Emuna, right? The intellectual one, which most of us we try to have, and then there's the higher one, which we're supposed to work on our whole lives to integrate as part of ourselves. But he says there's a third level of Emuna, which is lower than these two levels, and that is Emuna of the lips. He calls it Emuna Hasfasayim, right? That is that somebody has trouble believing that Hashem is in charge of everything. Somebody who doesn't, even on an intellectual level, doesn't really appreciate this. Now, usually, why is that? Why does that happen? A person's had a lot of difficulties in his life. He's had a lot of troubles. He's had a lot of problems, and therefore he has a lot of questions. He doesn't understand, and everybody's probably had moments. Again, these three levels don't mean that a person is in one of these levels. We've all probably had moments in different levels in these different levels, right? There are moments by Ne'ilah on Yom Kippur, we have that highest level. At that moment, the Avera doesn't tempt us. Most of our life, we're in that middle level. There are times we're on the lower level, so we have questions. Why did Hashem let this happen to me? What's going on here? How does Hashem allow such tsaros in the world, right? We're not supposed to. We have to work on that. But so what happens? He has these questions. And with these questions, it's hard for him to have Emuna, right? But he wants to believe, right? No from Jew, when he has those questions pop into his head, most of us don't say, okay, forget it, I'm not putting on tefillin today. I want to have Emuna, but I went through some difficulty, and I have these questions in my head. What do I do? So the Torah and Chazal already explained to us that happens. That's part of the natural life of a person, and the way that a person deals with it. What's the advice to do that is to speak words of Emuna, even if you don't feel it fully, to speak words of Emuna, right? I think I've told the story, I forget which Rebbe it was, but he saw one of his Talmidim saying the 13 principles of faith at the end of davening, and he was crying. So he asked him, why are you crying? He says, because I'm saying these 13 principles of faith from the Rambam, the Yud Gimel Ikrim, and I don't fully believe them. And so the Rebbe says, yeah, you say it as a tefillah. I'm asking Hashem to give me this Emuna. So a person speaks these Emuna. He repeats the 13 animamims, right? And that will when he has Emuna, words of Emuna on his lips, in his mouth, that will eventually affect his mind and his heart, right? It'll go into his heart, into his mind, and he'll have one of the better two levels of Emuna, right? And this is, we're going to say next week in at least the first 2 days, we're going to say in Hallel, we say Hamanti ki adaber. I believe because I speak. When a person speaks words of Emuna and he learns things about Emuna, that will bring him to Emuna. Now, when the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim, whose authority we were under? Paroi. Paroi is the one who says, Mi Hashem asher eshma b'koili, right? In Shmos, Perek Hey, Pasuk Beis. Who is Hashem that I should listen to his voice? Paroi is the anti-Emuna. Who is Hashem? I don't recognize Hashem at all. Not intellectually, not in my heart. I'm not speaking words of Emuna. Paroi is the anti-Emuna. As a matter of fact, if you jumble the words of Paroi, you get Peh-Ra. He has a bad mouth, right? We said Pesach is a speaking mouth. This is a bad mouth. And we were under the influence of Paroi. We weren't even able to get Emuna onto our lips. We couldn't even put Emuna onto our lips. That's how we ended up in the 49th level of Tumah, right? And that's what the Arizal means, that Dibur, that speech was in exile. We couldn't even speak words of Emuna. Now Hashem comes to take us out of Mitzrayim, but we're so far gone. So Hashem shows us a lot of miracles. That automatically puts Emuna into our minds and our hearts, right? When you're watching miracles happen every day, when you see seas split and you see the makkos, then the Emuna is very clear. But then Hashem takes it away from us because that's not real Emuna. That was given to us. We have to now earn it on our own. So we get this moment of Emuna, and then it gets taken away from us, and we don't have a way to feel it in our minds and our heart, except by speaking, right? Hamanti ki adaber. I will have Emuna because I speak. I'll speak about Emuna, that will give me Emuna. And when we speak about Emuna, the more we speak about it, the more we learn about it, it returns to our minds and eventually to our hearts until, right where we came across the Yam Suf, we started speaking words of Emuna until we were ready to be able to stand at Har Sinai and hear Hashem say, Anochi Hashem lekecha asher tzivtecha me'eretz Mitzrayim. We're able to be at a place where we could receive the Torah from Hashem. So it turns out what the Arizal said is very good. When we were in Mitzrayim, we couldn't even speak words of Emuna. Hashem gave us a little taste so we know what we're working for, but then He leaves us in a place where all we can do is speak words of Emuna. We're not there yet. We have the 49 days till we get to Har Sinai, the 49 days of Sfira, to speak words of Emuna that eventually bring Emuna into our minds and our hearts. That's why the Yontif is called Pesach. The difference between Mitzrayim and afterwards is in Mitzrayim we were under Peh-Ra, which is Paroi, a bad mouth, and now Hashem wants us Pesach, talk a lot of words of Emuna. And that's why this Yontif, as we mentioned in the beginning, is all about speaking. Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Even the matzah is called Lechem Oini. One of the explanations in the Gemara in Psochim, right, is that Psochim Daf Kuf Tes Vav is because She'oinem Alov Dvarim Harbe. We speak over it a lot. We see speech plays a very big. The children ask questions. We answer. Speech is a very important element. It's a critical element of Pesach, right? The more one speaks about Yetzias Mitzrayim, we don't have this by other mitzvahs. You do the mitzvah. Here we have the more you do, the more praiseworthy it is, because that's the whole idea. It's all about speaking words of Emuna, speaking about the story about Hashem saved us, speaking words that are going to instill Emuna in us and our children. He says, but when we're on this lowest of the three levels of Emuna, where we're just speaking the words of Emuna, we're trying to get that Emuna into our heads and our hearts, that's called like borrowed Emuna. It's called She'ela, borrowed Emuna, right? Just like when if I borrow something from you, I borrow your hammer. I'm allowed to use it as if it's mine, but the bottom line is it's not mine. It's really not mine. I could use it now like it's mine. So he says the same as with Emuna. When a person speaks of Emuna, but he doesn't feel it inside, so he's allowed to use it, but it's not really his yet. Until it's in his mind and then eventually in his heart, it's not really his. He's borrowing the Emuna. This speaking of Emuna, when I don't feel it, and that also comes from the word she'ela, which is borrowing, is also shaila, right? This is what we say, a person who's in this situation. He has shailas, but he speaks and learns about Emuna to answer those shailas, to answer those questions. And that's why we're running out of time, but before we left Mitzrayim, Hashem says to Moshe, Daber na, speak please, ba'oznei ha'am, in the ears of the people, v'yishalu, and they should borrow. It's talking about the borrowing the money from the Mitzrayim, borrowing the kalim from the Mitzrayim. But Hashem is telling Moshe with the words Daber, start speaking, and you'll borrow Emuna until you own Emuna, until it goes into your mind and your heart. Hashem is telling Moshe, tell the Jewish people, start talking about Emuna. It'll start off as borrowed. You don't have it in your hearts and your minds yet, but you'll borrow it, and then it'll be like it's yours, and then you'll end up having it in your heart, minds and your heart. And that's why we specifically come to the child. He's a she'eni yedea lishol. He doesn't even know how to ask. He's having trouble even with this level of Emuna. He doesn't know how to ask. He doesn't know how to borrow Emuna yet. He definitely doesn't have Emuna in his mind and his heart. So that's what we answer him. We teach him how to borrow Emuna. You don't have Emuna in your mind and your heart yet, and you don't even know this idea of talking about Emuna. We're going to teach you. And that's why we say, V'igad levincha b'yemahu lemar. We said, why does it need to say the word lemar in the pasuk? Because you have to tell your child that you have to lemar and l'daber. You have to speak. You have to speak about Emuna. This is why Hashem did it for me in Mitzrayim. How did I earn Emuna when we left Mitzrayim? We were so far away. We were on the 49th level of Tumah. Because we borrowed the Emuna by speaking about Emuna constantly. So we asked also, why do we start? In Halachmana we say hashta hacha l'shona shota hacha l'shona haba ba'ard Yisrael. Hashta hacha hey chaf aleph is the Rosh Tevis hamanti ki adaber. We're saying, you know what we're saying? We're saying now we're here. Where's here? Doesn't mean I'm here. I'm sitting in New York or in Tel Aviv or in whatever program I'm on, or in Miami, right, or Orlando. It doesn't mean a physical location. Hacha means at this point in my life, I'm in a situation of hamanti ki adaber. I will get Emuna because I speak. Even if right now I don't have the Emuna I want, but hamanti ki adaber, I'm going to speak about Emuna, right? I'm going to talk about Yetzias Mitzrayim. I'm going to do Lamar. I'm going to tell my child, V'igad levincha b'yemahu Lamar, telling him, Ba'avor zeh asa Hashem li b'tzeis Mitzrayim. This is why Hashem took me out of Mitzrayim. Just tying it back to Parashat Tzav. That's why the Parsha is so busy with this idea of telling Aaron and his sons to go to do. Aaron and his sons, it's this hishtalshus. It's going from the father to the sons. It's this constant conversation, and that's why at the end of the Parsha it says that it's a shvach of the Bnei Aaron. It's a praise of Aaron and his sons that they didn't change anything. They kept pushing through. There were days, right? Rashi said at the beginning of the Parsha, there were days. It's hard. You need a special command of tzav because you have money on the line. It's not so easy. You're a kohen. You have more work to do than others. But if you keep pushing, keep pressing ahead, keep speaking about it, passing it from father to son. What did Rashi say? Lashon zaruz miyad uladuris, from now and for future generations. These are all lessons to the future generations. We give over to the children, and we give over to ourselves. Whenever we talk about children, we also talk about the child inside. We give over this lesson. Keep talking to Hashem. Keep hamanti ki adaber. Rabbi Nachman, I think it was Rabbi Nachman, or it's maybe one of his talmidim, said hamanti ki adaber. You know how you have Emuna? Because you speak to Hashem. Because you speak to Hashem. Even when you have questions, even when it doesn't feel, you don't feel it inside. You speak to Hashem. You bring that Emuna in. You talk to the Kahanim. You tell them to be Zoras. Don't let themselves fall into the trap of the Yetzer Hara. And then we bring the Emuna from our lips into our minds, into our hearts. And through this, Rav Twersky finishes off. He says, with this, we should be Zoicha to the Emuna of Lashona Haba Ba'ard Yisrael B'vias Mashiach Tzidkenu B'meher B'yameinu. We should come with this Emuna. We should bring this Emuna from our lips into our minds, into our hearts. With that will bring us. That's what brings us into Eretz Yisrael. That will bring us, Eretz Hashem, into Eretz Yisrael. With Mashiach Tzidkenu, we'll see all of the Geula. We'll feel the Emuna in our hearts. That we won't have these questions. We won't have the challenges of the Yetzer Hara, because we'll feel it, and our bodies won't want. We know it says about the Avos, their bodies didn't want to do Averas. They couldn't bring themselves to do Averas because their entire being was coursing with Emuna, and everything, Hashem's will, was the only thing that mattered. I wish you all a beautiful, wonderful Shabbos. Sorry for going a little bit long. And a Chag Kosher v'Sameach, HaKosher and Lichtig and Freilich and Pesach.